Mohon perkenan Tuanku Chancellor mengurniakan kepada Yang Tuan Yang Terutama Matamela Sero Ramaphosa ijazah kehormat Doktor Hubungan Antarabangsa.
Dengan kuasa yang diberi kepada beta, maka beta kurniakan kepada Tuan Yang Terutama Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa ijazah kehormat Doktor Hubungan Antarabangsa.
Matamela Sero Ramaphosa.
Your Royal Highness, Paduka Seri Sultan Nazrin Muhyiddin Shah, the Chancellor of University Malaya, Your Excellencies, Pro-Chancellors of University Malaya, Honorable Minister of Higher Education of Malaysia, Datu Seri Diraja Dr. Zambre Abdul Kadir, the Honorable Chairman and Member of the Board of Directors of University Malaya, Professor Datu Seri Dr. Noor Azun Abu Osman, Vice-Chancellor of the University Malaya. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and my compatriots who've traveled with me from South Africa, who are ministers, deputy ministers, and key officials in our government, allow me to begin by thanking the faculty and leadership of University Malaya for this great honor which I accept with deep humility. I also accept this honor also with humility, following your conferment of the same honor to our icon, the father of our nation, Nelson Mandela, in this very university. We always try to emulate him, to walk in his footsteps. And today, as I stand here, I feel his presence, I feel his spirit, and I rejoice that this moment I am sharing with all of you. So thank you very much for honoring us in this way. While this honor is conferred in the name of an individual, however, this honor recognizes the achievements of an entire nation. It recognizes the struggles of the people of South Africa for democracy and freedom. It acknowledges the progress that we have made in building a new society from the ruins and the ashes of apartheid misgovernment. It is a new society founded on the principles of equality, justice, and solidarity. This honor, in the form of an honorary doctorate in international relations, is being conferred at a time of great turbulence and uncertainty in the world. The principles and values that we have sought to advance in global affairs and international relations, such as equality, justice, diversity, and sustainability, are being challenged by injustice and inequity, unilateralism, protectionism, disunity, unsustainability, greed, exploitation, and environmental degradation. We believe that this honorary doctorate is a confirmed as an affirmation of those values that we've always lived by. This honor affirms the bonds of friendship between Malaysia and South Africa and affirms the values that we share as two peoples. This is an honor dedicated to our shared pursuit of knowledge and our shared desire to advance humanity through learning and understanding. It is an honor that I dedicate to people struggling against discrimination, against human rights abuses, poverty, inequality, and injustice wherever they may be. Your Royal Highness, it is an honor to stand before you to discuss South-South diplomacy in the 21st century. Malaysia and South Africa, which is a topic that resonates deeply with our shared values of unity, cooperation, and mutual respect. To fully understand relations between South Africa and Malaysia, one has to delve into the historical linkages between our two nations. We need to understand how these connections established a firm foundation for our relationship today, and how they paved the way for a bright future through South-South diplomacy. The bonds that bind our two nations together are not only bonds of friendship, they are bonds of kinship, of ancestry, of history. They are bonds that go back several hundred years. Today we pay tribute to the rulers and the peoples of the Malay-Indonesian archipelago, whose exiles, workers, and scholars helped to build the South African nation. The earliest recorded arrivals of people from the Malay-Indonesian archipelago at the southmost tip of Africa were mostly enslaved people. They were brought against their will and in violation of their fundamental rights to provide labor to early Dutch colony at the Cape of Good Hope. Among these early arrivals were also political exiles. There were also skilled artisans and religious scholars. Yet even amongst the degradation and dehumanization of slavery. The arrival of these people was simply transformational to the place that they arrived at, South Africa. This early community carried Islam to South Africa and the Holy Quran's message of equality. They brought comfort to the dispossessed peoples of South Africa, even at that stage. Scholars of early Cape history recall how the Dutch discouraged enslaved people from many lands from converting to Christianity. To admit them into the Christian faith, they said, would mean acknowledging their humanity and their personhood. In stark contrast, Islam, which had been brought from this part of the world, offered a sense of belonging that did not care for race, that did not care for status or position in society. At a time of bondage and racial hierarchy, the early Muslim community at the Cape practiced the values of equality and dignity, values that we have sought to advance in global affairs through our G20 presidency. Beyond the sense of belonging and acceptance, the Malay community offered social services like charity, caring for the sick and elderly, orphanages, the recognition of marriages, and decent burials. The mosques and madrasas of the community that came to be regarded as the Cape Malays gave spiritual instruction and formal education at a time when most local churches would not let enslaved people even near their buildings, let alone to enter into the door, because they were different, because they had a different religion, and because they had a different skin color. The Malay language had a formative influence on the development of Afrikaans, one of our 12 official languages. It is an extraordinary fact of history that the earliest written Afrikaans was actually in Arabic script, recorded in the madrasas of Cape Town in the 1830s. Today, Afrikaans is the third most widely spoken language in South Africa. Yet the most profound legacy of the peoples of the Malay-Indonesian archipelago in South Africa has not been food, culture, or language. The legacy of these early arrivals is found in the ideas of social justice, of human equality that was brought to our shores long before our freedom was born. The spirit of equality, the spirit of justice was exported from this part of the world to South Africa and planted there like big trees that continued to grow over the years. So as South Africans, we know where the origin of this sense of consciousness, sense of justice, sense of dignity came from. We are honored that it came from this part of the world, and we say thank you for contributing that to our country. the ethos of justice, the ethos of dignity, the ethos of respect of one human being to another prevails until this very day. And we learned it from the people who came from here to South Africa. This spiritual dimension would eventually evolve into organized resistance against injustice, against colonial rule, against slavery. And it eventually blew out into resistance against apartheid rule. We recall the contribution of political prisoners like Tuan Guru, who was imprisoned on Robben Island where Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years, who later established the first masjid in South Africa. We remember leaders like Sheikh Yusuf of Makassar, who, exiled to the Cape, was influential in establishing Islam in the Cape, providing a sanctuary for slaves. All the important values were being practiced even then. From these beginnings, the Cape Malay community in South Africa has birthed many brave leaders who stood up to challenge racial exclusion, colonialism, and apartheid. 70 years ago this year, Bandung in Indonesia became synonymous with the global resistance against oppression and colonialism. The Bandung Conference, held in 1955, was the key event that marked the beginning of the non-aligned movement. It brought together leaders from 29 Asian and African countries to discuss issues of mutual interest, such as anti-colonialism, economic development, self-determination, sovereignty, and peace. Among the delegates from across the world, the African National Congress, Nelson Mandela's party, was represented by Moses Kotane and Molvi Kachalia. The Bandung Conference established the principles of respect for sovereignty, non-interference in domestic affairs, and peaceful coexistence amongst the people of the world. It laid the groundwork for a broader movement that has grown to include over 120 countries, aiming to foster international cooperation, to oppose colonialism and imperialism, and to promote economic and cultural development independently of the Cold War superpowers. In the face of empire, Bandung opened up a new era for South-South cooperation. Writing about the Bandung Conference many years later, the African National Congress President, Oliver Tambo, and a long-standing friend of Nelson Mandela, would describe the Afro-Asian Solidarity Movement as having traveled a long and complicated but glorious path. He said the Afro-Asian Solidarity Movement has proved itself as a steadfast friend of all peoples fighting for national and social emancipation. All these years later, the Bandung ideals of sovereignty, self-determination, non-interference in domestic affairs, and peaceful existence based on unity, dignity, and strategic cooperation remain more important than ever. These are the ideals that continue to define South Africa's relations with Malaysia. When the Bandung Conference took place, Malaya had just not yet attained its independence. Yet upon independence, Malaysia would go on to play a leading role in the movement of the Global South, as well as the non-aligned movement, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and much later, the G77 caucus within the United Nations. Working together with other nations on the African continent, including my own country, South Africa. We cannot speak of this history without paying tribute to the great Tunku Abdul Rahman, the very first Prime Minister of Malaysia. Tunku was a bridge builder between the nations of the Global South and a true friend of the South African people. He played a leading role in forcing the withdrawal of apartheid South Africa from the Commonwealth in the early 60s. He used his stature to condemn the racist regime of South Africa at the United Nations. Under Tunku's leadership, the young independent nation of Malaysia was determined to reflect the principles of Bandung and its foreign policy and in all its other affairs. It is a source of great pride to us that the ties between Malaysia and South Africa have endured. They have strengthened over the years. Since the time of the early Cape Malay community, through the anti-apartheid struggle and into our democracy, our destinies have been intertwined as two nations. The spiritual inheritance planted in South Africa by Tuan Guru, Sheikh Yusuf of Makassar, and other exiles and imams would come to define the principal resistance of the Cape Malay community to apartheid, which inspired the rest of the people of South Africa who were struggling against the yoke of apartheid. Our shared history may not have been of our own making, but it has evolved into a principled solidarity between our nations. When we were liberated from apartheid bondage, Malaysia was at our side, for it, as a country, had continued to support our struggle, for which we are grateful. And even today, and even as Nelson Mandela expressed it 35 years ago, I express it now. I once again say, thank you to you, Malaysians, for supporting our struggle. Today we are free, we have democracy, and you have contributed greatly to this achievement. We regard you as partners, as stakeholders, and we regard you as friends. When President Mandela was released from prison in 1990, Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad was one of the first foreign leaders he met with. As the liberation movement preparing to govern, the African National Congress sought to learn from Malaysia's economic success story. As we crafted our own economic vision for democratic South Africa, we were eager to glean lessons from Malaysia's Look East policy and the new economic policy, which focus on rapid industrial growth and with social equity and redistribution. Speaking in 1997 at the Malaysian Institute of Diplomacy and Foreign Relations, President Nelson Mandela said, "South Africa takes particular interest in Malaysia's success in overcoming the legacy of colonialism and poverty and in the economic policies that made this possible." He added that South Africa had much to learn from Malaysia's experience as South Africa restructured its economy. Since the mid-20s, South African parliamentarians and officials, government officials, that is, have taken study tours to Malaysia to learn about industrial strategy, national planning, and policy design. A number of South African emerging business people have also taken trips to Malaysia to come and learn about how your businesses are run, but also to learn from the transformation journey that you had embarked upon, as we wanted to mirror what you had achieved. In the formative years of our democracy, Malaysia was one of the earliest and largest investors from Asia, investing in areas and sectors such as banking, telecommunications, energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, real estate, and other sectors. Today, South Africa is Malaysia's largest trading partner in Africa. Our economic relationship holds immense potential. As I was talking to Prime Minister Anwar yesterday, we both agreed that we have not yet reached the level that we want to be. We need to do much more than what we are doing. And in the course of our visit to Malaysia, we've been exploring areas of cooperation that are aligned to our respective national development imperatives. On the foundation of our firm diplomatic relations, we are building ties of trade, investment, and commerce. Our countries have complementary resources and capabilities. We do not see ourselves as competitors. We rather see ourselves as complementary partners. South Africa holds substantial reserves of critical minerals. Malaysia is rapidly expanding electronics, electric vehicles, and battery manufacturing industries. You are well versed in semiconductors and in a number of other new technology capabilities. This provides opportunities to develop integrated value chains that recognize South Africa's ambition to develop its own industrial base and add value to the minerals that we extract. The formation of the African Continental Free Trade Area offers further opportunities for partnership between South Africa and Malaysia in reaching a market of 1.4 billion people. There are significant opportunities for partnership in the production of halal products and manufactured goods in South Africa for export to the rest of the African continent and to this part of the world. As like-minded and active non-aligned countries, Malaysia and South Africa have common views and interests on a number of issues. As the chairs of ASEAN and South Africa as the president of the G20 respectively, Malaysia and South Africa are advancing similar visions and similar agendas. We cooperate in multilateral organizations such as the United Nations and its various agencies, the Commonwealth, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, and others. Such cooperation is essential at this time of great uncertainty amidst an increasingly fragile and, I would say, dangerous international order. Conflicts and wars, contestations over trade, the energy transition and the pace of the digital revolution are reshaping the international order. In some places, they are replicating colonial-era patterns of dependency and threatening to deepen inequality. At a time of global disorder, the countries of the Global South must evoke and revive and further embrace the spirit of Bandung to chart a new course for our shared future. At a time when suffering, dispossession, and denial of dignity persist, at a time when greed has become the order of the day, and at a time when unilateralism has become the order of the day, our two countries are called upon to together work towards a future that is more equitable, more humane, and that respects the dignity and worth of every human being. Beyond our shared history, beyond our bilateral relations at economic level, Malaysia and South Africa stand shoulder to shoulder on the global stage in our mutual quest for social justice for the people of the world everywhere. Our two nations have stood consistently for the reform of the institutions of global governance so that the needs of the Global South, which have forever and a day been neglected, should now be recognized. We continue to call for the reform of the United Nations Security Council so that it reflects the realities of the 21st century and so that it may fulfill its original purpose as a guarantor of international peace and security. There is a need to stand together in combating climate change, both in mitigating its effects and in pursuing a just and inclusive transition to low-carbon economies. We have both a common interest and a common responsibility to ensure that those countries that are historically responsible for greenhouse gas emissions provide substantial support to those countries that are most affected by climate change. We thank Malaysia for its unwavering support for our G20 presidency, which we have convened under the theme Solidarity, Equality, and Sustainability. And we thank Malaysia for readily embracing this theme, a theme that others have sought to deride and have not found ways to fully embrace. We know we can continue to count on Malaysia's support of the 4 key priorities of our G20 presidency. Our first priority is to strengthen disaster resilience and response. And we are calling for global cooperation, which includes financial institutions and the private sector, to scale up post-disaster reconstruction. And we've taken the view that with climate change, on an annual basis, disasters that are given rise to by climate change continue on a repeated basis to damage people's lives, damage infrastructure in more or less the same places all the time, whether it is in the global south or even the global north. This, we have said, needs to be addressed, and the financing mechanisms to finance recovery should be put in place. Our second priority is to ensure that debt sustainability for developing economies is addressed. We are advancing solutions for unsustainable sovereign wealth, sovereign debt levels, high deficit and liquidity challenges, extending debt relief and addressing the cost of capital. The cost of capital for many developing countries has become so much higher than what they spend on social programs. And yet, the global north spends far less money on servicing their debt. And therein lies the unfairness. And we are arguing that this unfairness should be done away with. There should be equal treatment when it comes to the cost of capital between the global north and the global south. There is just no need for discrimination, and the discrimination of the past based on colonial principles should come to an end. Our third priority is to mobilize finance for a just energy transition. We need increased climate finance to flow to developing economies, to strengthen multilateral development banks, and to leverage private capital for initiatives like the Just Energy Transition Partnership. Our fourth priority is to address the issue of critical minerals for inclusive growth. We've said that we need to have value addition near the extraction sites where the minerals are found, so that the value chain can be established in the country where the minerals are found, so that those countries that have minerals should no longer just export rock, soil, and dust to other more developed metropolis. We must harness critical minerals as engines for growth and development, particularly on the African continent. Through our presidency, we are seeking to strengthen the response of G20 countries and the broader international community to the pressing issues of our time, to address poverty, inequality, climate change, pandemics, and rapid technological change. We seek to build a more peaceful and just world where no one and no nation is left behind. And we pay tribute to the principled solidarity of the peoples of Malaysia with the oppressed and suffering people of Palestine. After decades of dispossession, repression, and oppression, the people of Gaza are facing genocide as we speak. We cannot but be moved to action by the slaughter of tens of thousands of civilians, forced displacement, deliberate starvation, and the destruction of homes, schools, hospitals, places of worship like mosques and churches, and other essential infrastructure. We welcome the ceasefire deal brokered by President Donald Trump and supported by a number of countries in the Middle East and beyond, including the return of the hostages, the release of Palestinian prisoners, and the resumption of humanitarian assistance. However, we are concerned that this ceasefire is being undermined by the continued assaults on Gaza and the West Bank. And we say this must stop, and it must stop immediately to give dignity to the people of Gaza. As the international community, we must make every effort to ensure that the peace deal provides a path towards Palestinian statehood and self-determination. We must insist and pursue the goal of a two-state solution on the basis of the 1967 borders, with a Palestinian state existing alongside and in peace with the state of Israel. This is the only solution to that conflict. Now, we support Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's leadership in publicly supporting South Africa's case against the State of Israel at the International Court of Justice, and for Malaysia's active leadership within the Hague Group. This is truly the spirit of Bandung, solidarity of conscience. Our shared history has taught us that through solidarity, we can escape the ghosts of the past. We can overcome the most strident of obstacles and help reshape our common destiny. As we look to the future, it is essential that we continue to strengthen the historical linkages that exist between us, between South Africa and Malaysia. We should celebrate the rich history that binds Malaysia and South Africa. It is important for us to honor the struggles as well as the sacrifices that were made by our forebears and strive to build a future rooted in collaboration and in mutual respect. As members of this esteemed university community, you have an important role to foster and enhance these connections and become ambassadors of goodwill between South Africa and Malaysia. You can lead the way in strengthening the ties between our two nations based on the principles and the values of equality, freedom, democracy, justice, and dignity for all. I received this honorary doctorate with gratitude from the University Malaya, an institution with a rich and proud history. I accept it on behalf of your brothers and sisters in South Africa who owe the people of Malaysia and its noble leaders a great debt. And thank you. And we will never stop saying thank you for standing with us in our quest for dignity and justice. And we will never stop from saying your people who were exported to South Africa against their will and found and made a home in South Africa did not only bring your culture, your language, your food, and your cuisine to South Africa, but they brought important values, values that they planted in South African soil, values that have to do with dignity, that have to do with respect for one another, that have to do with justice. And it is these values that were brought from here that inspired us to work together with your compatriots who were forcibly brought to South Africa to fight against colonialism and to fight against the apartheid system. We honor them and we respect them for what they did. As we enter a new era, even greater era of South-South cooperation, we carry with us the spirit of the early Cape Malay community, whose values are the bedrock of the free South Africa we have today. And I'll say that let the friendship that was inculcated into South Africa from here continue. Let there be peace. Salam alaikum. I thank you.